Right, welcome back to The Big Question. In studio live, we have Nyeri County Women Representative Priscilla Nyokabi. We had also invited Suna East MP Junet Mohammed, but he is not coming. We haven't been able to reach him. His chair is even here, but he has not showed up for the program. We will, however, proceed with the discussion with the county woman representative. Thank you so much for making it and for taking time to come to studio. Now, as Jubilee, you've seen the courts, the resolutions, you've seen the Okoa Kenya movement. What do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, it was such an anti-climax. We expected a lot more. I mean, they put up so much hype over Saba Saba, and they were going to give a big statement. But to move from dialogue to referendum, I mean, there wasn't anything new in what they said in the 13 proposals. A lot of what was in the 13 proposals, other than the referendum, is really what they've been saying all along, and is the things that the government is doing anyway.
Okay, so the rally was an anti-climax, and the 13 resolutions as well for you were an anti-climax. Now, they've obviously proposed the referendum, which we've been asking viewers to tell us whether they think it's viable. Do you think it's viable?
It's not viable at all. I mean, first, they didn't tell us why we need a referendum. If you look at our constitution now, you have reasons around which a referendum can be held, and you have key, or the heart of the constitution matters, which is where you need to hold a referendum. But a lot of the other things that they propose, cost of living and anti-corruption, those are measures that don't need a referendum. So either they have a hidden card, that there is something they're not saying about the change of presidential to parliamentary system, which is really what would require a referendum, or then they're just lost, you know. It's either of the two things. I think CORD spent a lot of time mobilizing people to attend instead of concentrating on the messaging and concentrating on the content, so that the content of that referendum proposal is very weak.
Okay, right. They're not here to defend ourselves, but let's move on to the legal aspects of this. What would it take to carry out a referendum?
I don't think we can even go into the question of a referendum, because we don't need to have any referendum. I agree with CORD to the extent that we need to implement the constitution and we need to give more resources to counties, which is not even a problem of Jubilee. The things that need to be done, and I like the proposals that security needs to be tightened, the anti-corruption measures, we need to be more careful on spending. None of those require a referendum. So the question of referendum doesn't even arise. We don't need a referendum. What we need to do is to implement the constitution. But in the event that it was to go that way, it wouldn't pass, because first, Parliament is critical to the referendum agenda, and they don't have the numbers in Parliament, and they would need to convince more than half the counties about these questions on referendum. But most important, and the worst part about their own proposals, is the IEBC. Our constitution requires that a referendum will be held by the IEBC. So they don't want the IEBC. They want the IEBC disbanded, and they want to hold a referendum. The two just can't sit together.
I know they talked about having a separate body set it up, but let's just go back to not in the constitution.
Not in the constitution.
Let's come back to that in just a moment. But they've insisted, they are insisting on a referendum. For that sake, what would it entail?
I don't know how. I mean, I really was hoping Junet was going to be here to explain how they are hoping to do a referendum without the IEBC. Because if you look at where the UN bodies come, it is countries like Syria and countries in real, serious, disastrous crisis, which Kenya is not in. We have a government that is working. We have challenges, of course, which are admitted and which are being implemented. And there are many, many measures. If you look at the budget that we passed, you see a lot of emphasis on security concerns. So if those measures work, then we will see insecurity starting to go down. On this question of KDF forces, I mean, the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, was in cabinet when the decision was taken, so he would need to tell us what has changed between when they took the decision and now that he's asking that the KDF come. So for me, the question of a referendum doesn't arise at all. I think that we know now they were just hoodwinking Kenyans on this dialogue. They want to hoodwink us again on a referendum question. I think we should abandon that whole debate and go to development.
Unfortunately, because they're not here to defend themselves, that's why I'm insisting a little bit on the process itself. For the sake of the viewers, for people who are watching, a referendum, by any means, what would it entail to carry that out? Just for the sake of clarity, again, like we said, CORD wouldn't be here to defend themselves, so let's focus a little bit on the process and what that would entail.
There would be two ways of going through a referendum, but to the extent that they propose the 1 million signatures means that they already want the popular initiative where Kenyans are in charge of the referendum issue. So 1 million signatures would be needed to validate the popular initiative, and there are two ways. Either you have a proposal that is written in form of a bill, or you have just general proposals which are then reduced into a bill. So once that bill is ready, it will go to the county assemblies. and over majority of the county assemblies need to agree with the proposals for a referendum, and then it would go to parliament, and in parliament again majority of the members have got to agree, and then if it touches on referendum questions, if like you want to change the term of the president, or you want to change the devolution structure, or you want to change the structure with the parliamentary presidential system, the sort of the heart of the constitution, then that would go to a referendum. In the referendum, you need a threshold to be passed. Majority of the voters in the referendum would need to agree, and also 20% of half the counties, 24 counties. I think if you look at the attendance in the rally yesterday, you could already see that they have very few counties to bank on. A lot of the counties are not supporting them. And then majorly there wouldn't be a budgetary allocation. Again, referendums are very, very expensive.
So what cost are we looking at roughly?
Oh, I think the last one cost over 20 billion. So you would be looking at a lot of money to hold a referendum, which is not in the current financial year. In fact, what IEBC is struggling with now is paying suppliers and other people who they didn't pay in the general election. So the earliest you can even have this in the budget would then be in the 2015-2016 financial year.
Yeah, let's talk about IEBC. You've mentioned them. Are you happy with IEBC? Are you comfortable with IEBC as it is?
The petition by citizen Wafula Buke on the removal of commissioners, which is actually not disbandment in his own petition, is before the Legal Affairs Committee, and I sit there as the vice chair. So we are processing that petition. We just had today the IEBC commissioners led by their chairperson, and then the parliament will make a good decision. The point is, the question of IEBC is not a referendum question. The question of IEBC is a parliamentary question, and there is a process that is detailed in our law and in our constitution on how you go about looking at whether the IEBC was right or wrong. So that's the process that Parliament is going on.
All right. It remains a big concern in some quarters. So what would it take then, if at all, to disband IEBC? What would that process be like?
I think the bigger part of the process is removal of commissioners as opposed to disbanding the IEBC. Remember, it's a new institution, so even if you have fault with the IEBC, you probably are faulting what the commissioners may have done. So the question of law is removal of commissioners and not the disbandment. We've seen disbandment in their list of 13 issues. I think that the question might be removal of commissioners. This is a new institution. I don't think we want to go back and start IEBC from zero. You may want to say maybe some commissioners didn't do
how then would that pan out, the removal of the commissioners? What would that process be like?
It's a parliamentary process now. So what the committee will do, if we think that the commissioners violated the law, there are even grounds written in the constitution. Either you violate the law, the constitution itself, or written law, or you misconduct yourself grossly, and there are various tests as to gross misconduct. If we find that that did happen, then we'd recommend to the full House, to the entire National Assembly, that the IEBC commissioners be removed, and then the report would be given to the President to set up a tribunal to now check the test, whether they misconducted themselves, the thresholds are higher. At this point in time, we call it a prima facie case. We just want to be sure that the IEBC did what they were supposed to do according to the law. That would be the removal process of IEBC. And once these commissioners are found not fit to continue serving, then we would have a recruitment of new commissioners for the IEBC. But the IEBC would remain. It's a constitutional body.
Right.
There would be no reason to disband. I mean, it has done an election in 2013. There's a mass of wealth of knowledge that it has acquired, not just the commissioners, but really the institution as a whole. So we might want to keep that institution and keep the knowledge that they have gained.
All right. Countywoman Representative for Nyeri, Priscilla Nyokabi. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. It was meant to be a debate, but that hasn't been. Thank you all the same for coming and shedding light on those crucial issues. We appreciate it. Of course, you're on The Big Question. Stay with us. We're back after this short break.